Good morning, everyone. I haven't seen you for 7 days, but in that 7 days, quite a lot has happened. And we would be a poor church indeed, in fact, a poor group of people indeed, if we did not recognize the changes that this country is going through at the moment with the death of the Queen and the accession of Charles III. So what I suggest that we do in order to note that is just take 1 minute, which I'll measure on my watch here. Stand if you're able, and we'll keep silence for a minute and try to use that time to support, and if you pray, to pray for a happy change overall. So let's begin. Thank you. Let's begin. Well, despite all that, and despite I can only call it a spell of mourning around us. It seems to be everywhere. Certainly it's on all the television channels. You do see a lot of black clothing as well. But despite all that, I'm happy. I'm happy because this is something we've done many times here today. So it's happy today because I'm looking at your loyal, emphasis on loyal, upturned faces, you survivors of that social shipwreck that we now call the pandemic. If I could whisper individually in each of your ears, I would say this: relax, be comfortable. Just consider this place to be your home to which you've returned. In Unitarian and Universalist congregations all over the globe, people are celebrating this occasion called the Gathering of the Waters at about the same time. Now we've come together, some of us out of a state of separation. Many of us have been on annual pilgrimages to visit family, see new sights, to relax from the toil of a year. And although we've been separate, we now easily flow together again. Please note how we've done that. Like our little vials of water will soon mix effortlessly in that rather undersized bowl. So I'm going to ask you to do that now, and I'll First, I'm going to light our chalice. We need to be able to see properly. If you have something you'd like to say to everyone when you pour your water, do, by all means. Otherwise, just be aware of the symbolic gesture you're making. I'm pouring for myself and for Jilly, who can't be here. Lovely.
Cliffs, the red cliffs, very beautiful. Love my holidays.
Lovely. We have water from so many exotic places, all the way from Sidmouth, from Crystal Palace, and South Croydon. I was going to bring some water that destroyed the ceiling in my kitchen last weekend, but I thought, no, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. It wasn't very nice when it came through. But now let us really come together, just like the water. The water knows how to be together in all circumstances. We got some salt water from Pauline. That was salt water, yes, seawater. And it doesn't need to be told, doesn't need to be invited. It mixes seamlessly. Let's sing a song. What do you say? Number 24 in the Purple Book. And I invite you to come sing a song with me. Thank you. I put the microphone nearer to my face. Can anyone still not hear me? You can't hear me? You can. Oh. I can hardly hear myself anymore. I am going to read something now which it makes me feel like I should apologize, because not only have I read this before, I've read it several times. It's something I wrote about 25 years ago. So some of the longer term members of you will know it, and for others it will be new, but its reflection has been published pretty widely in America and here, and I thought you might enjoy it on this occasion of the gathering of the waters. And I called it Ordinary Water. We have shared our water as we share our presence today. So now everybody, let's take a few minutes and look at that water. Look at that water with fresh eyes. It's as still as the water from an ancient underground cavern. And yet we know that it could just as well have been drawn from a rushing mountain stream, or a storm-tossed ocean, or an enormous river at the flood. But it is ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. So just rest your eyes upon it and recognize its ordinariness. It's fundamentally the same as that which pours from our taps, or that which floods the gutters of our roofs, or that which is drawn from high mountain springs and transported to our shops with such great effort and expense. We can see it as the most common thing that there ever could be. We spray it on our gardens and steam it into our ironed shirts and sit in it warm and pleasant like emperors of Rome. We boil it and drink it, bend to a fountain in the heat of the day and gulp it, step over it in puddles and shake it off our umbrellas. There is nothing more ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. But we grew in it. We lay in the dark and recapitulated the process of evolution in its warmth, growing hair and eyes and fingernails. When it burst from the sack and flowed away, we experienced our first real emergency and came yelping into the world of light and air, some suppose unwillingly. And that was water, the first mother, which came from the teacups and mineral drinks of our blood parents, changed in form and saved as our first home by processes we can hardly describe, let alone understand. And yet, it is ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. Others held our heads safely above its danger and bathed us. The water took into itself the dirt of our small lives and carried it away, but it did not cease to exist. In the endless repetition of its eternal cycle, it flowed away and cleansed itself in earth and sun and air, and returned to nurture other babies, to wash the bodies of the dead, to feed the children rice and dal and maize meal and spaghetti in 1,000 lands. Each time it became renewed and fresh as the waters of Eden, yet it carried the memory of the mud of the Nile, the slime of Okavango, and the deadly chemicals of Lake Erie. It was through all of this ordinary water, the most ordinary thing in the world. It's the only thing in this world which exists as a solid, a liquid, and a gas. In the frozen tundra, it cradles the remains of the mastodons. It forms the roof of the Inuit. It carried the diaspora of the South Pacific on palm rafts and the hulls of the conquistadors on their bloody mission. Industry captured it to power the mills of their revolutionary project. Turner painted it in the clouds. It turned to blood and then parted for Moses. It covered the world of Noah and sheltered Poseidon, brother of Zeus, the ancient gods of our tradition. It pours endlessly for the faithful in the paradise promised by Allah, and carries the Holy Spirit down the war-torn Jordan for Jesus and his millions. But it is ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. From the beginningless beginning to the endless end, on our island planet, there is no more, though no less water. That which pours from our taps once quenched the thirst of saber-toothed tigers, formed the blood of Genghis Khan, intoxicated Henry VIII at his table, and carried the funeral boats of Vikings. It pours from our bodies, transforms itself through an endless alchemy of change, and appears again. And without it, we become dry sacks, devoid of life. Our bodies are 3/4 formed of it. With even a small drop in its level, we become confused and weak and vulnerable to illness. But it's so common that we use it without care, without knowing, because it is ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. Now, spare a moment to look more deeply into that water. And look how it blends without prejudice, though it will have traveled from places far away, maybe even different continents. Water knows how to be water in all times and places. It is democratic in its union. Invisibly, the molecules embrace without prejudice or preference the Mississippi and the Pacific, the Thames and the Mediterranean. It carries with it something of those places, minute, particulate matter, too thoroughly dissolved to be examined. And it is a medium of matter. It's a medium of soul. Its waves have embraced paddle steamers and pleasure yachts. It's been truffles and hot dogs, tears of widows, blisters of centurions, and communion wine. It is ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. In the figurative, it is soul itself, the mirror of Narcissus, the resting place between epochs of the sword Excalibur, the still pond where the lotus bears the jewel, and Mother Ganges. It is the sea of poetic love, the lair of Grendel, the unknown and unknowable of Jung's unconscious, and the Brahman ocean of unknowing to which the drop of Atma ultimately returns. It is the river of Heraclitus, ever-changing, ever the same. It is the sea of unchartable depth where Leviathan lurks, and it is the evolutionary soup from which we dragged ourselves with only a sentimental backward glance at the dolphin. It is the resting place of dreams and the breeding ground of nightmare. It is soul itself. But it's ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. It may be that we can see that somehow the ordinary contains the miraculous. That small vessel contains the world. We are not separate from it. We too are ordinary, but we too contain the world. We are ordinary, the most ordinary thing in the world. So let us just delight in the ordinary, and let us swim in the water of life from which we sprang. and to which we return. The middle piece. Let's now join the silence that is not silent at all. Let's listen to the murmurings and messages that spring from our own hearts as we follow the fading tone of our bell into our own center of stillness. One Spirit, known as Holy, we have listened. Let it be that we have heard. So be it. Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. I'm going to invite us to sing a rather older hymn from the Green Book, but Fiona, I was wondering if we couldn't aim the camera at that mural of ours, because it occurs to me that a lot of people out there in the cyber world have never seen it actually, and someday we can talk about it. So it's number 238 in the Green Book, Mysterious Presence, Source of All. about this water business. We were so dry for so long you couldn't see the number plate on my car. It was parked in front of the house, covered in dust. We were watching these horrible stories about all of our vegetable gardens drying up, and then all of a sudden what happened? A frog strangler, as Mark Twain called it. It rained and it rained and it rained hard. And there are parts of the country that are still worried about flash flooding. And during all that time, I was feeling, as I used to feel years ago when I worked in Africa and places, we're really dependent on that stuff. We really are. If it doesn't rain, we're in big trouble. It doesn't matter how scientific we become. California is curling up, it's parched. It'll be like one tortilla chip after a while if they don't do something. And then I remember being in Botswana where I was teaching school leavers to grow leafy green vegetables because the village I was in had the highest rate of tuberculosis in the country. And leafy greens are a good way to prevent TB. And it almost never rained. Finally, we had to abandon a gardening project when the government put in draconian measures to save what little water that desert country possesses. And then I lived in Spain in a village. Farmers talk of nothing else, especially in the long, dry summer. A system of irrigation rights has been in place there since the time of the Moors, and rainfall is no light matter. You can get punched by saying the wrong thing about it. There have been lots of cases of fights between villages quarreling over a very small amount of water. A lot of my memories of life in poor countries have been with me lately, maybe thinking about that. I remember taking some Samburu kids, young men, in the back of my Jeep about 10 miles they wanted to get some water. And they got this water from this vile, shallow, big puddle in which the flies were swarming. And when they filled their vessels, I realized you couldn't see through it. And I said, what are you going to do with that water? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you going to drink it? Yes. Yes, it's water. Every 8 seconds, a child dies from lack of clean water. Dehydration from waterborne diarrhea kills more people every year than AIDS and malaria combined. The price of giving access to clean water to every single person in Africa is equal to the world's sale of armaments in a single day, every day of the year. When I worked in those countries, I was surprised to learn that water is not only life, water is power. When a borehole was installed in a village where I lived in the Dominican Republic, a powerful family kept the pump parts in their home. One of the sons was trained by the U.S. Peace Corps as the engineer to repair the well, and he shared his knowledge with no one. If anybody was able to get use of the pump, they had to pay. But no one seemed to be angry about it. They said they'd do the same thing if they had the chance. Well, there are a lot of charities that specialize in projects to provide the desperate poor with water, taps, wells, purification systems, and so on. So far, they've managed to provide sources of water to several million people. I think it is a good thing to support them, which is why every year at this service, our collection, the offering, goes to WaterAid, which I think is the best of all those charities. That's one thing, but the questions They're not easy ones. When you put a tap for the homeless on the streets of Mumbai or Kolkata, you're altering lives for good and ill. When a borehole is sunk in the arid regions of East Africa, goat herding, the pastoralist way of life, ends along with centuries of rich culture. When irrigation with well water begins in Botswana, selenium salts and other heavy salts flow into the topsoil, changing its character and perhaps poisoning it. If a well is controlled by a Brahmin family in an Indian village, the poor become worse off and a new element of class slavery begins. Maybe all these reflections are leading us to the realization that human suffering is not a technological problem, not even one of nature. Maybe it's a spiritual question. And like all spiritual questions, maybe we have to struggle for understanding, not just pay for the answer. And meanwhile, there are a lot of thirsty people out there. And in other places, some are drowning. As I speak, California is on fire. The absence of water has set new records. Even areas of Europe are now reaching desert conditions. But sometimes, as now, you hear about water being the opposite problem, because in Pakistan now, 1/3 of the landmass of that country is underwater. Millions more are homeless in sites all around the world. We still don't know what the approaching hurricane season is going to do this year to New Orleans or Tokyo. I don't think water is being celebrated in these places right now. There's some fairly dread scientific predictions out there. Some believe that climate change will make a huge amount of the world's farmland unusable, either through drought or loss of land caused by rising sea levels. There's a looming food crisis, something we've all but learned to ignore, even as we eat our air-freighted kiwi fruits and strawberries at Christmas time. Some voices are warning that we will need a second planet, same size as Earth, to feed everybody by the end of this century. And believe it or not, a few visionaries out there are planning how to do that. Go somewhere and nick somebody else's planet, tow it into orbit around the sun. I kid you not. So there we are again, center stage, mighty man pulling the levers of cosmic power, designing bombs on rockets to blow up any asteroid that dares to threaten our world. We spout self-important verbiage about science and its great power. Meanwhile, we let the millions starve, and we lead stunted lives because of the hegemony of our scheming brains and their dazzling digital achievements. And when the big privatized corporations are revealed as just so many hucksters peddling snake oil on the high streets, we pay money we do not possess to bail them out, while people with no jobs just meekly acquiesce. The beautiful symmetry of our systems outweighs the evidence of our eyes. Things aren't working very well. Things aren't working very well at all. We ignore that because our theories of the cart dragging the weary horse behind. Just as in most things that are unbalanced in the world, things that remain unbalanced, what's called for is not merely new laws. What's called for is a change of heart. Part of that change of heart is a new awareness that we live in a much less stable world than ever we knew. If you measure the breathable atmosphere that we move and live in, this continually affronts me every time I think about this. Someone said it's the same as taking a sheet of cling film and wrapping it around a football. that little distance, the thickness of the cling film, is our entire world. All of the air we breathe, all the water that we have. It seems daily that new discoveries are made about cosmic rays, the Earth's magnetic field, even the cause of weather coming from outer space somehow. We are in a very fragile world. And here's what I say, that shouldn't terrify us. What it should do is remind us that the fleeting nature of our lives and our history are part of what gives impetus to that impulse within us we call spiritual. It should remind us that though science may inform us, and does, it is unlikely to save us. It should say to us, enjoy and appreciate what you see before you now. It's a fleeting miracle, and we are, for whatever reason, at this point, its beneficiaries. And for those of us who are not so fortunate, it should remind us that we are not alone on this little blue ball in space. The wizened faces of the Somali children, you see them on TV? They're the faces of your children. One of the first moral lessons I ever learned was that it's rude to eat in front of other people. My mother told me that. And that's a good way to recognize and celebrate the miracle, the fleeting miracle of plenty. Now we are blessed. Water rarely troubles us here with surplus or dearth. We need to know that for now we are blessed. A thing that helps me remember that, though I don't do it nearly often enough, is something a boy once asked me in bone-dry Botswana after our vegetable garden dried up and died. He said, Art, why does it always rain where the white people live? Well, I didn't know what to say in response. I still don't. Except this, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this moment of relative calm, which still retains the blessings that we crave, if only we knew how to recognize them. The blessings of the ordinary. And I'm grateful because we are together in this blessed moment when our task is to celebrate and enjoy them. The underlying theme of the last week, if you watch what's happened since the death of the Queen, has been about gathering, people gathering here and there, gathering in their thousands outside the palaces. Harry and Will's gathering, people coming together. Let's go with that. Let's support that. Amen. Lovely. Thank you, Will. let's go ahead and take our offering, and remember today it is for water aid. So think about why it always rains where the white people live. Quite a few things I have to mention today. On Saturday, this Saturday coming, is our remembrance service for Lowell, who now has died. He died 11 weeks ago. And they've only just now done the cremation. It was done Tuesday of this week. There will be people coming from around the country, including his brother Bob, who will be here. And that's going to be at 12 noon on Saturday here. And afterwards, in honor of Lowell's copious appetite, I've decided that we should serve ice cream and cake, just as if it was a birthday party. And so that's what we'll do after the service. So be there, be square. That's Saturday at noon. 2 weeks from today, I won't be here. You can look up here and see this empty pulpit. I tried, was unable to get a professional replacement, but you did so well on that community service before that I think what you want to do is come in here, bring something with you you think other people might like. Let's see, I don't know who's playing. You playing, Will? Be Jill. Jill will be here, so you do a request thing, get Jill to play some music, and just talk about things, talk about the church, talk about your lives, drink coffee, eat leftover cake, have a good time for an hour. That will be Sunday the 25th. Great. I will be sadly all the way over in remote France and Paris, preaching in Paris. Tough life, but somebody's got to do it, right? Yes, you're going to oh, sorry. Okay, good. We're getting, for the sake of cyberspace, we're getting some contributions now. That would be good. So we want to make you, should we make you the hub? Go talk to Freddie if you think of something you'd like to do in 2 weeks' time. Thanks very much. Okay, and now, this is our annual cookout. People have been slaving out there while we've been here talking. And we've got lots more food than we've got hungry mouths to feed. So I want everybody to take their belt out one notch right now. And just resolve you're going to help get rid of that food because it's not going to keep. And we've got some marvelous kielbasa, Lowell's favorite sausage. We're having brioche buns for our hot dogs and our hamburgers. So it's going to be a good time. So let's do that. I think, Fiona, you brought some potato salad. We got all kinds of stuff. And then there's cake. Okay? Right. Let's sing a hymn. Number 198, Purple Book. We'll build a land. the earth that we call home does not reject its waters as they flow back into it. As we leave now to join each other in feasting, let us pour it back into the earth from which it sprang. Let us hope we can carry away those things we'd be better off without. And in the spirit of new beginnings, let us make a new resolve, a brand new resolve, to look after one another, to really look after one another until we meet again. Amen.
Thank you.